Oh, Chris, wait, you're muted. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. Good morning. Welcome to the Milford Board of Education Board Work Session for May 15th, 2020. You start with a call to order and roll call, please.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Here.
Mr. Hvac?
Here.
Mrs. Brady?
Oh, also muted. Hold on.
Here.
Mr. Ham?
Here. Thank you. We need a motion to approve today's agenda. Roll call, please.
Motion first.
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes.
Mr. Hvac?
Yes.
Mrs. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Ham?
Yes. We're going to start with item 1, Buildings and Grounds Committee. Mr. Jeff Johnson.
Thank you, President Ham. Members of the board, I just wanted to give a quick update on some of the projects we've got going on. In all of our buildings, our custodians are well into their summer cleaning process. We had started some of that before we were shut down for the summer, and certainly when we were shut down for the year, we got into that full force. We are not doing team cleaning in our elementary buildings as we've done in the past, just too many custodians in the building at a time. So we're keeping them in their own buildings all summer so we can keep that social distancing happening across the district. The big projects we've got going on are the high school bleachers. I don't know if you can see behind me, but the old ones were removed a week and a half ago, almost 2 weeks ago now. They are scheduled to be shipped the second week of June, and they'll put those in those last 2 weeks of June. The other thing that's going on, we've had the roofing project at Mulberry and McCormick. Materials have been delivered to McCormick, and they will start that in earnest on Monday. They've done a little bit of work, but mostly it's been getting materials and staging things so that they can get started on Monday. The plan right now is that they will do McCormick and finish it and then move on to Mulberry and do it rather than doing both buildings at the same time. So that starts Monday. And then the other big thing we've got going on is the pool HVAC replacement. That started this week. The old equipment has been demoed out and they're well on the way, and everything looks good to be delivered and be done by August 1st. So everything's going well, but just getting started, but going well.
Any questions for Jeff? Comments? Thanks, Jeff. Moving on to our Communications Committee, Mrs. Wendy Panica.
Planica. Yes, good morning.
Panica, sorry, Wendy,
Right.
I'm butchering things today.
That's okay. I just wanted to give you all a couple updates. First of all, we need to approve the meetings from the February meeting. I had sent them out earlier. If Emily and Andrea could approve those, that'd be great.
Motion to approve.
Approved. Thank you very much. I just had a couple of updates. I wanted to share with you that we started the new resident mailings. So every new resident is going to get the Milford Matters mailing and a signed letter from the superintendent. In the agenda, you can click on envelope design and superintendent's letter to see that. We did the March mailing. They run a couple months behind, and we mailed to about 75 people. So that'll be once a month, just as new home sales go. We'll hope to get more. It'll depend how many we get, depending on home sales. The second thing is our website information hub. That's been my primary project during the whole school closure. I checked the stats on the website the other day and was pleased to see that people are using that page because we've spent so much time putting resources on there. A lot of people overall, our website stats are down simply because when we're in school, a lot of our computers, their homepage is our website. So because people are logging in different ways, we've lost those views, but people are still viewing our website, and they're definitely looking at the information hub, so that's good. Another big project is social media. At least every day, sometimes twice a day, we're posting to social media. And that has been our most effective means of communication during the school closure. We've had excellent views on all of our posts. Our average number of post views is 3,000, which is good. I'm happy to say that the teacher's video that we published right after spring break, that received 50,000 views, which is amazing. So I'm really happy with that. I think that families and students definitely liked seeing their teachers on film. We've been doing the senior shout outs every day. I've been publishing 10 or 12 of those a day, and the goal is to have those finished by next Friday. And those as well, people really liked those, which is good. The other popular posts that we've had a couple galleries of pictures of students and staff working at home. The Day of Hope post was another popular one. So again, social media continues to be where people are going to get information. So we'll continue to post on there. A couple of the upcoming projects, we will be sending out a postcard the first week of June. That'll be an all district mailing. The next piece is we are working with the treasurer on a finance communication piece. Not exactly sure how that will look, but we wanted to update our community on just the finances of the district and the state cuts. And then finally, I would like for you all to click on that instructions after the meeting when you have a chance, because we'd like you to record a video of yourself for the class of 2020. And those instructions give you tips on how to record yourself and a sample script. Basically, we just want you to express your congratulations to the class of 2020. And if you could have that to me by the end of the day, May 20th, then I'll put that video together and we'll post it on the 23rd, right around 3:30 or 4 o'clock before the time that they're going to be showing the virtual graduation video. So that's all I have, unless you have any questions.
Quick question on the video. Do you care? You just want it as an MP4?
That's fine. Yep.
Okay, perfect. If anybody needs tips, I've been recording some videos at work. You can use the free Zoom account. And if you just start a meeting with just yourself, you can record it or have somebody else record it for you. And then it downloads pretty easily as an MP4 file to send along. So if you don't have video equipment, the free Zoom account will do it for you.
Yeah, I'm kind of anticipating I'm going to have like 14 or 15 takes of this to get it where you want it to be.
That's fine. You can send me all of them. I'll edit it for you.
There you go. One word at a time.
Yep.
Wendy, I love the new resident mailing. That is such a great idea. You said new homes, but you mean any home sale, right? So any new resident is,
yes,
that
any
is
new resident.
Awesome. And that's a great publication to send to them because I think it gives a really good overview of the district and it shows them where to go to get information. So kudos on that. Great job.
Good.
Of course, one of the things that was postponed was Wendy was working on a realtor breakfast meeting to be able to share that information. I'm sure that will occur at some point in the future. And I would also add that Wendy and I talked yesterday that once we've begun to make some decisions about what August and September look like, she'll work on something that's graphically pleasing and easy to understand for families as well. I've seen a lot of back to school documents that are just full of text, which are good for us while we're trying to figure things out. But for families, we're going to need something that's more graphically pleasing and easier to follow. So it was a great idea that she had.
Okay, and if we're you know, obviously the hope is we can try and get kids back into buildings in the fall, but that's still unknown. We're obviously going to have to really have a complete set of graphic signs located throughout the buildings, and I'm sure that will be a rather large project as we get closer to some of those decisions in the future.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you, Wendy. We're going to move on to item 3, which is our Curriculum Instruction and Assessment Committee, Dr. Jill Hollingsworth and Mr. Paul Daniels.
Thank you.
I believe Nancy's going to kick us off with the U.S. World News Report.
Okay.
Yes, thanks, Paul. I will go over the complete report at the board meeting. So you have the attachment. Essentially want to go over changes that we saw that were really related to our retesting protocols for state test, that rather than having students test 3 times, we are now looking at having students test twice. And then after the second time, if there's still not a passing score, we have been able to create various alternative pathways. So that is the primary reason for, we could say, a higher ranking. It really has to do with the retesting part. And as I've always said, if we did not make our high-level math classes accessible to all students who are capable of doing that in junior high, our ranking would be even higher than it is. That equity piece is essential. There's a couple of things to point out now. Our college readiness rank is 9th in, I'd say, Southwestern Ohio. The rank in took at least 1 AP exam is 11th in Southwest Ohio. Graduation percentages, we're actually the highest of those that have a ranking. Some school districts are so small that they don't have a ranking at all. Didn't have the numbers to do that. So that's just an essential overview. And again, I will go through the entire PowerPoint, the board meeting. Do you have any questions now?
Is there a reason why some of these notable schools do not report their graduation rate or are not ranked on the graduation? Some of them are not small schools, and some of them are ranked fairly high. I'm talking about Mason, Walnut Hills, West Claremont, Winton Woods, Wyoming.
That's a good question. It was not clear on U.S. News and World Report why their graduation rate was not included.
Okay.
And the U.S. News and World Report pulls that from the state site. That was it on that.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Item 2 is a revision to the policy. There are 2 small revisions to that policy. One is that we're adding nicotine to be tested under the drugs to be tested section, and that will be done through an oral mouth swab. So we do have the nicotine intervention program in place at the high school. So students who do test positive, we do have an avenue to service and support them should they need that after the screening. So those are the 2 changes that we're making to IDGJA, and that's for athletics and extracurriculars.
Scientific question. How long will that stay in your mouth, I guess, if you're smoking? If you smoked the night before, are you going to test positive?
I can't even pretend to give you an answer. So I will check with Patty Price and I will get you an answer about how long that is able to detect. So if you give me some time, I will connect with Patty and I will have an answer for you.
Just a point of information. It's always nice to know those things.
Great. Item 2 is a revision to our summer school flyer. And that revision is actually for a reduction in what we're asking our parents to pay for our 2 programs. So we run 2 summer programs, typically grades at the secondary level. One is for credit recovery, and that's any course that you fail that will be required for you to graduate. So typically we would have charged a fee for that, but in discussions we are proposing to the board that based on sort of the economic situation, that we believe it's in the best interest if we want to help kids get across the stage, that we need to sort of offer that at no cost this year. The second part of summer school is when we are granting original credit, and the only original credit that we usually grant at summer school is for physical education and for health. So we are asking for that to be reduced by $100. Currently, we have 80 students signed up for the summer programs, with the majority of those being for original credit, either health or PE. And the counselors are reaching out to students for credit recovery, that we look at their credits, where they are, how far behind they are to graduate, and really try to get them in to emphasize the importance of getting this done prior to the school year. So that's item 2. Any questions on item 2?
I have a question. It might not be for you, Paul. It might be for Jill. But I'm wondering, with a lot of these kids, especially the younger kids, how are we keeping tabs on how they're doing and if they're keeping up, so that we make sure that they're ready to go next year, and 6th graders going into junior high? So do we have plans for that at this point?
That's a good question. Our teachers and our principals are tracking how much work the students are doing, if they seem to understand it, et cetera. But we also know completely that there are going to be some gaps. So we have committees. I have committees working to identify what standards we were able to teach, which standards we don't feel like we met. And we will build those in the first 4 weeks of school next year, so that students, 4th graders going into 5th grade, for example, I'm most concerned about math. That's the subject where we may not have hit all of our power standards. So the 5th grade teachers next year in math will cover those standards that we're not sure the 4th grade students maybe got completely or understood since they were at home. The same thing will have to be done in 6th grade going to 7th grade, but in math, the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade teachers are all teaching math with our new program. And so those teachers are meeting together. 6th grade can communicate with 7th grade. 7th grade will kind of start over, refreshing and going over some things in 6th grade. Mr. Daniels did a information gathering process with our 6th, 7th, and 8th grade teachers to see which standards were taught online and which were taught in person. So the ones that were taught online, we can review at the beginning of the year.
Great. If you find that you have a lot of review to do in those 4 weeks, how far behind does that put you for next year?
It's possible that it could put us behind, but I don't think it will. When we look at the month of May in school in general, between all of the testing that occurs, as well as all of the saying goodbye activities and the closure activities and field days, et cetera, we missed a couple of weeks of instruction in May. So, and April, we had 1 week of spring break, so we missed 3 weeks there. We're lucky that what we missed was at the end of the year. So in some of our subjects, the end of the year activities are standards that are not assessed or not tested on state tests. So a lot of times those are enrichment activities anyway. So it's really just math that we need to make sure we didn't, the students understood and didn't miss anything. But I don't think we'll be behind significantly enough that that it'll put us behind. We may have individual students who will need some intervention.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I did have one question. We are very close to the end of the year and what would have been graduation. Do we have any solid numbers at this point that you could share on graduation rates and how they compare to the previous year?
The last update that I received from Principal Kaufman this week is that there are 6 students for whom they have some concern and they're still working with.
So that would be 98% then, basically.
Right. And that's pretty, that's very, very typical for this time of year, week before graduation. There's sometimes 4, 5, 6, 7 students who principals, counselors, teachers are working directly with to get some work finished up. So
How
I
many
got a
students
great
are in?
email from Rob Hatfield, who's the associate principal of the Success Academy yesterday, that there was a student who they were very, very concerned about for not just academic reasons, but some social emotional reasons too. And Mr. Hatfield has been working with student and parents as well as the teachers. And Mr. Hatfield sent me an email that that student had completed the work and will graduate. So that was actually the highlight of my day yesterday, was learning that great news, because it's a student we've all been very, very concerned about.
How many students do we have in the graduating class?
Paul, do you know the final number?
No, I'll put it in while we're here. I'll put it in Dazzle and
Okay.
I'll pull it out.
Okay.
I'm sure it may vary a little bit between now and next week anyway.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Okay, thank you.
Item 3 is we are, as you know, we sent the letter out to the community and we're transitioning from math 1, 2, and 3 to algebra, geometry, algebra 2. So we need to convert one of our courses. So teacher's going to write that course Math 3 to algebra 2, and that'll actually be paid out of IDEA. So that's specifically services that course there. Item 4 is that we have on each of the leadership teams at the high school and the junior high, we have members who attend those meetings and report back to departments. They're not department chairs, so we pay them hourly to attend and represent those groups. So item 4 is for the 25 hours for the teachers in those buildings to represent their groups on the building leadership team. And that occurs outside of the school day. Item 5 is curriculum pay for 2 teachers to manage the on-grade or online health. Remember that we moved all of our health courses online. So we currently have 9th and 10th graders in those who have started and will continue to work over the summer months. And they will work with the students who accelerate and that are going to be 8th graders next year. Those students who choose to take online health this summer, they will do the grading for that. Item 6 is we're just going to revise a course that we currently teach with some new items. So it's just 10 hours to facilitate an English course revision there. And then item 7, I'll go into a little more detail. It's also in the informational item, but we're having a cohort of teachers be trained in the process of moving from traditional face-to-face, but what does the planning, assessment, the building of a course online look like? So they'll be actually starting that work on Monday with me and Connecting Ed. And this is for them to be writing and working with the coaches and facilitators over the summer. So we got lucky, we can do all the training now in the next 2 weeks, and then they can actually do the writing and the individual coaching sessions over the summer.
Paul, for those teachers, I don't know all of the teachers' names, but is it a pretty good representation of the buildings they come from or the levels they teach? Or
yeah, we have an elementary teacher. This was open invitation to everyone in the district. So we did not boil this down to like only secondary. So it was open invitation.
Awesome.
We have a large contingent of world language teachers and then a 6th grade teacher who are very interested in culture course. We have some social studies teachers that will be taking a traditional face-to-face and moving it to online. We have the English department represented, and then we have a conglomerate of 2 teachers from the fine arts and a math teacher who are collaborating on a course. And then we have a special educator from the junior high. So we've got 6, 7 through 12 represented, and it was open invitation. It was, are you interested? We reviewed what was going to be the investment in them and the investment to create the course. And then we had a meeting just to kind of review all those things. Some people were all in, and these are the 15. In fact, we had to increase the PO because we originally only were going to write 3 courses, but we had such interest that we're going to actually write 6. So
awesome.
And then the informational items. So back in February or March, all the days blur together. I want to say February. We adopted Carnegie, and those trainings were supposed to be face-to-face. The teachers have actually completed their first day of online training. We did that 2 weeks ago, and they'll actually finish out next week. So that will be fully implemented and ready to go. We've had about 26 teachers. That includes the content teacher and the co-teachers have gone through that training. So that's full steam ahead, and the pandemic has not stopped us from completing that work. The last 3 days, we've had 34 teachers take part in project-based learning. So that was a huge component of moving forward the Portrait of an Eagle, because a lot of those competencies in the Portrait of an Eagle actually are married inside of PBL. And again, Emily, I'm going to use your original question. These are teachers from all across the district. We had several elementary teams. We had a few teams from the junior high and some teams from the high school, and they are general ed teachers, they are intervention specialists, and we even had one of our teachers who teaches into the school-based day treatment take part in this and write a project for her students. And so those projects range from a pollinator garden at one of the elementaries to recycling, to what does art look like in the Spanish culture? Are American wars justified? And they run the gamut from math to social studies to English, science, and it's K-12. Actually, I think we had first grade teachers in there. And so that was really exciting. They did 7 hours the last 3 days. And I'm really pleased. The trainers really modeled some ways that we can continue to grow ourselves teaching remotely if we have to continue. And then the online course creators, like I mentioned, we have the 15 teachers going through that starting on Monday. And it really looks at the design process of creating a course to be delivered online, to how does the role of the teacher change? What does assessment look like? Obviously, more authentic tasks, asking the students to apply and create versus maybe a traditional quiz or a test. How to make the learning engaging in terms of how long should it be, what content needs to be there, the active learning strategies, and then wrapping up with embedded formative assessments. So we actually broke those down into 6 sessions. So there's 6 90-minute trainings, because we're finding this is going to be a heavier lift, because there's a little more direct instruction from our trainers. And then we'll cut them loose this summer to write those courses. Those are creative writing. How to do a TED Talk was a huge interest of our kids. So we've got 3 teachers, Katie Arbor from the Fine Arts with an art teacher, Adrian Hawk, and a math teacher, Rachel Weemkin, came together. They're going to write TED Talks. The One World, Many Cultures, Local History, Survey of American Poetry, and Wildlife Conservation. So some of those we'll actually be able to use at the junior high. May not be for a credit, but to test out how to operate and do an elective. And then we've had some talks with the World Language about wanting to get into the elementary. This might be the way they can get there, but not physically be there through some online learning. So that's what we're working on in terms of the online. And then lastly, we did engage our teachers in a thought exchange. So we'll process through that as we want to know how they continue to grow as professionals. How have they grown individually? What have they noticed about themselves and about the importance of their role? And I can tell you overwhelmingly, it's never to take advantage of those face-to-face opportunities with students. But they also, on the flip side, said they have grown tremendously in learning to deliver instruction remotely and all the tools that they've added to their toolbox. And all those will be helpful when we get back into the building, because we've been having a blended learning focus. And blended doesn't mean technology. It means a moment in time when technology is appropriate in that room, they'll have more tools in their toolbox. So I could tell you our teachers have been amazing. There's a thirst for learning. Jenny's had a co-teaching PD this week, general ed teachers, intervention specialists. So daily we have a large amount of teachers who are both teaching remotely and growing professionally. So they're balancing that quite well.
Thanks, Paul. I have the number. It's 501 seniors.
Very good. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah.
First time we broke 500. It's not, is it?
Class of 2017 and 18 were both over 500 as well.
Somehow we lost Mr. Ham.
Chris isn't on here anymore.
You're in charge, Andrea.
Do you want to wait for him, or what do you want to do, Nancy?
Oh, he's coming back.
I see his name.
Okay, good.
There he is.
Unmute.
Sorry, was I the only one that dropped out?
Yeah.
Hello? Sorry, I'm not sure what happened. Okay. We'll go back to Personnel Committee with Mr. John Spicer. Can you all hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
President Ham, members of the board, good morning. Welcome to Personnel. I think we have 12 of the 16 pages. We'll get to it. There's an MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, that was done in conjunction with the Supplemental Review Committee. In that MOU are a couple items that we specifically wanted to get in, was under 1A activities, number 1, elementary remote learning specialists, adding elementary remote learning specialists at each elementary grade level, K through 6, unified arts and intervention specialists for 9 total positions. Again, that's a supplemental position. These are not teacher positions. Rob and Jill could certainly speak to that if you had questions about that specific. Some of the others in activities are Junior States of America advisor, Chinese club advisor, high school esports advisor. Under athletics, we are requesting high school water polo assistant coach, an assistant swimming coach as well, and a junior high competition cheer coach. And then under C, general, we're asking for your approval in this MOU for a junior high parking lot supervisor, Specifically, one of those parking lot supervisors would be dedicated to the crosswalk area. We thought that that was very important for safety reasons. So that is the MOU that we're asking for your consideration this month. Any questions on the MOU? Okay, very good. We'll move on to item B. Item B, we have 2 policies for your review, 2 regulations with each policy, or excuse me, 1 regulation for each policy and 1 exhibit. These policies are federal law, and it has to do with the Families First Corona Response Act. I did send with you, or you should have a copy of item 6, which is a summary. Summary, which really kind of covers everything that is in the policy. This summary was sent out to all staff in early March, so they are aware of it, of their employee rights. So we're asking, because it is federal law at this point, we are asking for you to adopt these. This would be the first reading of these 2 new policies. Any questions on the policies? Okay. We do not anticipate anyone taking, using the Families First Corona virus response lead at this time, but certainly it's there if they need it. Okay. All right, under item C is informational. We have an administrative reassignment of Jimmy Carter, who's an assistant principal at the high school. He'll be going to Mulberry Elementary as an assistant principal there. Excited for that move. Under item D, we are asking for your approval next week, David Haluga as the high school assistant principal that would replace Jimmy Carter. David will be coming to us from Woodward High School. Under item E is the cell phone stipend for David. Under item F, we have approval of administrative contract recommendations for our principals and assistant principals, and Mr. Yeager as well. So that's items 1 through 11. Under item D, we're asking for the approval of the professional services provided by Mr. Zidron to work with our NGC. Under H, approval of the following certified resignations, 1 through 3. Under item I, we are looking at nothing. Under J, sorry about that. Approval to pay the following certified employees a stipend for mentoring school psychologists and speech and language pathologists. These are students from Miami University. It is flow-through money. Items 1 through 5. Under item K is our family medical leave of absence for certified staff. This is for information purposes only. That's 1 through 15. Nothing to look at for item L. Under N, approval of the non-renewal of reading tutor contracts. This is formality. This has nothing to do with performance. That's under under M, 1 through 15. Under N, approval of certified 1-year contract recommendations for the 2021 school year. Items 1 through 31. Again, those are our 1-year contracts.
Quick question: how does somebody get bucketed to a 1-year contract or a 2-year? Like I see them different.
So under certified staff, we have contract sequencing, and we have so it's a one year their first time. They get another 1 year, then a 2-year.
Okay.
For the 2-year, they get a 1 or a 2, or they can apply for continuing contract status if they meet all of the requirements for a continuing contract status. So that's typically that's definitely how that works. So it's a 1, 1, 2, and then from there on, they're either recommended for a 1 or a 2. And if they meet the continuing contract eligibility. They can apply for it, and we can grant that. Or you can.
And then once they're continuing, then that is indefinite while they're in our district and meet their, job duties or whatever.
Yes, once you have continuing contract status and you're evaluated, you're still evaluated, so that takes place. For some reason you decide to leave the district, your continuing contract status is a property right in Ohio. You take it with you. If you stay in that district for 2 years, you then get a continuing contract automatically in that school year, or in that school district, not school year, excuse me.
Mr. Spicer, what percentage of our teachers are sitting into a continuing contract setting?
I would have to get that number to you. I don't know that offhand.
Okay.
I'll get that.
I'd like to have that, please.
Yes, sir. Okay. Let's see. We were on O. Letter O. Our 2-year contract recommendations for the 2021 school year. Items 1 through 84. Item P, approval of certified continuing contract recommendations for the 2021 school year, 1 through 9. So we are recommending those folks for a continuing contract here at Milford. Item P, sorry about that, there's 2 P's. We'll get that corrected. Approval of the 1-year contract recommendations for the 2021 school year. These are our rehire employees. 1 through 3. Item Q, approval of certified hiring recommendations for the 2021 school year. These are new hires. Items 1 through 7, and you'll see 5, 6, and 7 are to be determined. We actually did some interviews for number 5 this morning. We'll do some more this afternoon after this work session. I know that Jenny is working on number 6, school psychologist. And number 7, I know Tom Wilson is working today and Monday on his intervention specialist recommendation, and we'll have that for you. Under item R, we do have an exempt resignation, 1 there. Item S, approval of exempt personnel 1-year contract recommendations for the 2021 school year, 1 through 6. These are all central office staff folk over here. Item T, approval of exempt personnel 2-year contract recommendations. Numbers 1 and 2, those are mental health interventionists. Item U, approval of exempt personnel continuing contract recommendations for 2021 food service and treasurer's department. Item V, approval of exempt hiring recommendations 1 and 2. W, approval of exempt personnel salary recommendations based on a 230-day contract next year, 1 and 2. X, classified resignations, just 1 and 2. Y and Z, nothing to report. Item AA, approval of classified 1-year contract recommendations for the 2021 through 9. Item B would be approval of classified 2-year contract recommendations for 2021, 1 through 17. Items CC, continuing contract recommendations for classified staff 2021, items 1 through 14. Item DD, approval of the classified hiring recommendation for this school year, 1920. It's a custodian. And item EE, approval of classified hiring recommendations for the 2021 school year, 1 through 7. And I do believe the last one here is, oh, no, 2 more. FF, approval of building supplemental contract recommendations for the 2021 school year, 1 through 67. Those building supplemental contract recommendations. And item GG, approval of athletic and extracurricular activities, supplemental pupil activity contract recommendations for the 2021 school year, 1 through 7. Any questions?
John,
Yes, ma'am.
where is Mina Espy going?
Mina Espy will be an assistant principal that will be shared between McCormick Elementary and Meadowview Elementary.
A little bit of a drive.
Principal Ellison and Mr. Wilson have a very good plan for how to do that. It's part of our developing leadership practices that we've implemented, that we're trying to give our assistant principals as many different experiences as possible to help them grow as leaders. And being able to work with 2 additional principals and 2 different elementaries will provide continued growth experience for Mrs. Espy. So we're very excited about that.
I had one question, if you will, here, and it's way back. It's back on page 5. We're on page 15, I think now, or 16. And that is Jeff Zidron. I know Jeff. I know what he's done throughout his career. He's been an athletic director, and I think he helped out when Mark Trout was going through some medical issues. Is he going to be, what's he going to be doing?
Mr. Zidron works with Stacy Smith in the 9th grade community, day-to-day operations with her, works with students. And obviously, as you said, he does have that athletic background as well. So he is certainly another person that Aaron Zupka or Mark Trout could connect with if needed, but that's not what his purpose is at all. It is to work with 9th grade community staff students and Stacy Smith, the associate principal.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions, comments? Thank you, Mr. Spicer. We're going to move on to Finance Committee. Treasurer Brian Rabe.
Thank you, Mr. President. First item is the board reports. I know on your agenda it says March 31st. It actually should be April 30th, so we'll get that fixed. Couple items I want to point out on the reports. We are a little over 83% of the year completed. General fund is just above 79% as far as expenditures over total. As far as the actual monthly reports, we'll kind of get into a lot more detail when we go over the 5-year forecast here in a minute. Investment report. Obviously, we had a number of investments that were called over the course of the month, but we are continuing to make investments more in the short term, more of anywhere from the 1 to 2 year range, just because of interest rates. We've had $4 million, a little over $4 million that matured in the month. We've made additional investments of $5.7 million. So of the little over or almost $64 million in cash currently, a little over 42 million of it is invested. So we're trying to do the best we can, but obviously interest rates aren't the best right now. But given the month of April, we collected almost $79,000 in interest, and we're approaching $600,000 interest on the year, which we should easily surpass for next month. So, any questions there? Okay. The next one, obviously, 5-year forecast. So obviously this was originally approved in November. The second time that the board officially has to do it is in May. So it comes about at perfect timing. So what we did in November is very much different than what's being presented here in May, given that everything that's going on. So just kind of want to walk through it almost line by line to kind of give you where we're at with things. So first line item being the general property tax. Obviously for this year, we've already collected all the taxes that we're going to collect. So we did see an increase in taxes compared to last fiscal year. However, with the shutdown and so on and so forth, we're still going to collect the income taxes, even for houses that may happen to go in foreclosure. Whoever buys those houses is still going to have to pay any type of back taxes. But what we're probably going to see is a delay in actually that money coming in. We're probably going to see an increase in the number of delinquencies, but eventually that money will catch up. So we did reduce a little bit just simply because of that, but over time that will catch up. The other concern that I have with the income tax or with the property tax is this calendar year, Claremont County is supposed to go through a full reappraisal. So originally what we were being told prior to all this is you're probably looking at high single digits or even possibly digits, double digits in increases in property taxes or property values. Not sure how this is going to affect that. So that's something obviously to keep an eye out for. I know there was one county in Upper Ohio, they were actually asking for the state to push back the appraisal for another year. I haven't heard that come out of Claremont County, and I don't know if that will occur, but obviously going forward, that's something that we'll need to continue to monitor and look at. The next line item down is the state foundation formula. Original biennial budget was that we were going to be held flat compared to last year. So that's what we originally had projected throughout the course of the forecast. Obviously, with the announcement last week of the cuts that are coming. So 1.243 million in cuts to the district over these next 2 months obviously has a significant impact on the forecast. What they're telling us is that cut will be basically the state money that we receive 2 payments each month. They're going to divide that over 3 payments. So the second payment that we would receive here in May will be affected, and then obviously June's going to be affected. So next month reports in May, you're going to see about a $440,000 drop in that figure, and then in May you're going to see the remaining balance of $880,000 drop in that line item. So obviously that's affected for this fiscal year. Next fiscal year, it's kind of still obviously an unknown. The talk around the state is we're probably going to see an additional cut sometime next year. What kind of being the rule of thumb that's kind of been passed around is expect about a 10% cut of state funding next year. So if we're looking at total 2.4 million or 24 million in state funding, expect probably about a $2.4 million cut for next year as well.
Brian, is that on top of the 1.25?
Yeah. So the 1.25 is this year and probably another 2.4 for next. Obviously that's all going to be dependent on how quickly the state gets up and running, how quickly the economy starts rolling back around. Because obviously the state's funding is all based upon income tax and sales tax. So obviously those are going to take, even though the economy starting back up, there's still going to be time. People got to get back to work. People got to find jobs again. And then how quickly do people go out and start spending? So that's all going to play into a factor. And then the other thing is, the rainy day fund is sitting up there at the state level. We were kind of hoping that the governor would dip into that this year to avoid some of these cuts. He chose not to. He basically came out and he's only going to use a rainy day fund at the bleakest moment possible. So we may not even get to that point if things start rolling around, but there's always that possibility that the rainy day fund could make up some of this, but we don't anticipate it happening. Moving down to property tax allocation, obviously.
He froze.
Into the real estate collections. And then the last revenue item would be all other revenues. We
Brian?
were originally, yes.
Sorry to interrupt you, but you froze when you started talking about property tax allocation. So could you go back for a second?
Sure.
Thanks.
So property tax allocation is the rollback, the homestead from the state. That's all totally tied up to the real estate. The state has given no indication that they're going to cut that. They've actually told us that that's coming through with no problem. So we really don't anticipate seeing any major changes in that area. All other revenues, originally back in November, we were expecting to see some type of increase in this. Because of the school closure, we're estimating this is going to remain flat. Main reason is we're not collecting the revenue from tuition. So all day kindergarten, preschool tuition, obviously that's being affected with the school closures with that. So that's affecting any type of increase that we originally projected. Pay to participate fees for the spring sports, obviously that is having an impact on that bottom line as well. So we did see some increases in some areas, but we think that's going to basically balance it out, that we remain flat for the current year. Obviously, if school starts back up in the fall, which based on the forecast, we're anticipating those revenues will obviously roll back in, and we'll be collecting those. So flat for this year compared to last year, but in the future, we expect some type of increase. Expenditure side of things, obviously, personal services and benefits. Obviously, we're continuing to pay those. Those are set by law. If there's a pandemic, the school district is still required to pay the employee. So there's really no change in those areas. Purchase services. Obviously, in this area, there's a number of areas that services are being reduced as a result of the school closure, transportation, busing, utilities that are current in the building. Some of those things that we typically would have paid for contracted wise with being closed, we're not paying those. So we're actually seeing a savings in those areas. So that's reflected. However, keep in mind that when we start school back up next year, those will all go back up to previous closure levels. Same thing applies for supplies and capital outlays. You know, we're not buying as many supplies as what we would have to close out the end of the year. So you're seeing some savings in those areas. But overall for next year, they're going to go right back up to where they were. So with all that being said, as a result of the cuts, it did throw us into deficit spending for this year. We're looking at just under $600,000 in deficit spending for this year. Obviously, that's going to carry out for the next couple of years. Keep in mind that in the next fiscal year 21 and 22, the capital projects, the roofing projects and stuff, those are in those numbers, so that it throws those numbers off a little bit higher than if they weren't in there. But that's kind of where we lie with the forecast. It's just a lot of unknown right now of what's going to happen at the state level, real estate taxes. So it's kind of a flip of a coin compared to what we did in November.
The 2.4 million additional cuts next year from the state, that starts August, is that correct?
Don't know. The state hasn't come out and officially did anything yet. We're just projecting that there's going to be some type of cut, but nothing has been official from the state yet. It's all, we anticipate something, but they haven't. Really, the state hasn't come out and said anything. It's more superintendent, other treasurers across the state have come out and said, "Hey, this is what to project what to expect, that we'll probably see something.
Well, when they're taking the 1.2 million in April and May, I believe you said.
May and June.
Excuse me, May and June. Sorry. That kind of implies to me that they're getting it all in this school year through the end of July, and I'm kind of anticipating that it might be starting in August, which would be another good chunk.
Right. But the main reason why they had to do it in May and June is because by law, the state has to end the fiscal year with a balanced budget, and their fiscal year ends June 30th. So that's the reason why it came about so late and why it's affecting us so late. So obviously when we roll into July 1st, if they do propose any type of cuts, hopefully they can spread that out for an entire 12-month period versus, hey, we got to take it in 2 months.
That was going to be my question. Would you prefer to have it as a 24 times or all at the end or all at the beginning?
I'd rather spread it out over 24 than have them take it all up front, because obviously if it's sitting in our bank account, there is some interest we can earn, but it's something rather us holding on to it rather than the state holding on to it.
Yeah, both of those cuts go through. That's 2 payments per month of about $150,000. So that's
correct.
That's a significant hit.
Yes, it is.
Brian, looking at our forecasted cash balance. So best practice is that we have about 3 months worth of expenditures in the bank, right?
Correct.
So that would be around 21 million. So
right.
Looking at this, before anything that happens next year, that means that by 2024, we have dipped below that, not much, but still below. If we have additional cuts, that gets pushed forward. It probably won't get, it'll probably be still the same year, but
right.
But it'll just be a couple million lower. So that's changed. That has changed. So that's just interesting to remember. We're being pushed backward a little bit here in terms of what we're going to need for the future.
Right. Right. Yeah. When you pull almost $4 million out of a budget, over a 5-year budget, yeah, you're definitely going to affect that cash balance at the end of 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like a lot. It looks like, oh, we still have $20 million at the end of 5 years. But when you look at your expenditure level, it's not that much money. So, and that's where we got in trouble back in the 2000s, where we spent that way, way, way down. And, you know, all of a sudden, well, with the way that the deficit spending just is geometric in terms of the amount that is affected every year. So
correct.
Anyway, it's just, I think we have to look at that very, very carefully.
Oh, sure. Yeah, it's definitely something that needs to continue to be monitored.
Can I ask a couple of questions?
Sure.
What was the actual number that you used in terms of revenue for next year in terms of what we expect to reduce? Did we use the 2.4 million in those revenue numbers?
I did.
Okay, so that's assuming
it's in there?
Yeah, the $2.4 million cut is in the forecast.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Okay, thank you.
So if you look at the top, under unrestricted grants and aid, you'll notice last year was 2.5. This year we're expected 2.3, and then in 21 it's 2.22. And then what we're being told is in that third year, that fiscal year 22, we'll go back up to pre-cut levels. So yeah,
I'm sorry, totally blanked out on that.
No, that's fine. So yeah,
no, that's good information. I like that we're anticipating so that somehow we get better news that will help our forecast.
Absolutely.
The second question on purchase services, there's a significant increase next year, as opposed to where we seem to have been fairly consistent around a certain number. But then there's looks like it jumps over 3 million next year. Is that tied to something in particular?
That there's I want to say it's $2.6 million. That's for the roofs, the HVAC and the bleachers.
Okay.
even though we did the purchase orders this year, we don't expect to make payment until after July. So that's all reflected in that number. And then you'll see in also in fiscal year 22, the other elementary roof. So that one's, I believe, is up $1 million. And then obviously those fall off. So that's the reason those two, yeah, you definitely see the 14.9 up to the 17.9 and 17.5. That's the result of those capital projects.
Okay, thank you. And then on supplies and materials, we actually go up this year and then go down. We're not seeing any savings from the buildings being closed for supplies and materials?
Not for next fiscal year, but what we did when we started the budget process for next year, back in April, we did ask all the buildings and all the departments to make cuts, reductions in their budgets. The billing levels were at 20%. The other departments were kind of varied. So that's the reason why you'll see the drop in fiscal year 21 is because of the cuts that we're making to people's budgets.
That's the 300,000, the 300,000 difference.
Yeah, so you'll see $300,000 there, and the capital outlay, which would be the furniture, that's being delayed. So you'll see there's also a drop of $200,000 in that area to account for that. So we're just kind of, if there's certain items we can push off a little bit, we push them off, and if there's other areas that we can reduce, we try to reduce. So obviously, with these cuts, the goal is to make some reductions to prepare for them.
Okay. And then, sorry, final question: the $2 million in encumbrances expected on June 30th.
Yeah, so we did the roofs, and
so that's
that's the roofs. So obviously, we did the POs in this fiscal year, but we won't pay them till next. So that's why that number's in there.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions? And then obviously in the assumptions, it's throughout that, hey, this had to be reduced because of the closure, or this had to be reduced because of COVID. So it is laid out in the assumptions of the reasons why there's the drops and so on and so forth. Okay.
Your assumptions are very good. Thank you for putting all that detail in there.
Absolutely. Yeah, being a crazy year, the more detail you can get in there so people understand it, because, you know, typically 3% a year, yeah, I get that, but okay, why did it drop? Why did this? So you've really got to explain it. Obviously the state reductions, we kind of talked about, so 1.243 million for this year. Obviously next year is kind of up in the air. When the state put that out, they didn't do a straight cut across the board. It wasn't like every district got 3% reductions. So what they did is they cut it. We haven't seen the actual formula that they've done, how they did it just yet. But it is based upon free and reduced numbers, wealth of district numbers. They've kind of came out and told us. So if you look at that attachment I gave you, you can kind of see the reduction for districts is all across the board. So obviously we know it has something to do with the economic indicators, but like I said, they haven't given us the actual formula of how they calculated it, but that's it. So for us, it amounted to $198 reduction per student. In a meeting that I was in yesterday, representative from ODE said if they made straight cuts across the board, it would have been a reduction of about $181 per student for every district. So we got cut 198 versus 181, which is $17. So if you take that times our number of pupils, it comes up to about a little over $100,000 that we're being cut by, versus if they just went a straight cut across the board. But like I said, they haven't put out that formula of actually how they calculate it, because It wasn't done by OD. My understanding, it was done by the governor's office. So then that rolls into the next item, is the federal CARES money. That's obviously still being worked out by the state as far as distribution per districts. Part of that third federal CARES Act by the federal government, vast majority of it went to school districts. The state of Ohio, the total is being projected as a little over $440 million. That's going to school districts. Original projected numbers is our share of that would be little over $491,000. However, about 20,000 of that is going to be designated for the parochial schools, non-public schools. So we're looking at funding from the Federal CARES Act of about $470,000. There is some restrictions on how you can use it, but obviously with taking the 1.2 million from the state, any federal money is definitely going to help in that area. I know, I believe it was Claremont County ESC kind of put together a breakdown of all the districts within Claremont County and kind of did a comparison of, okay, how much are you cutting from the state versus how much federal dollars you're going to receive. So kind of netted that out. So with us, and we are taking the largest reduction in Claremont County of about a little over $752,000. West Claremont comes in second at $542,000, but there are some districts within Claremont County. Four of the 9 districts are actually going to lose money net out. 4 of the districts are actually going to gain money. Giving an example, Batavia's state reduction is $219,000, but they're going to get $400,000 in federal money. So it's kind of five districts in Claremont lose, 4 districts in Claremont actually gain money. So that's just a kind of comparison of where some districts are gaining some districts are losing some based upon that, because the federal CARES money is completely based on Title I numbers, which is free and reduced numbers. So now the federal CARES money, because it's federal dollars, it's not included in the 5-year forecast. So that will be completely separate. That eventually we'll have to bring to the board as far as appropriations and stuff like that. But that is some money that we're expecting here. What we're being told is it will be available sometime here towards the end of May, best case scenario. Let's see. Any questions on that?
And just to be clear, we do not know how the state reduction formula came about. We don't have any details behind how those numbers were determined.
No, we don't have that yet. They haven't released that.
And then the Federal CARES Act allocations, even though that's federal money, is it distributed to the state who then distributes it, or is that directly from the federal government?
No, everything goes to the state, and then the state breaks that out.
So they're using a separate formula for their reduction in state funding than they are with the pass-through federal funding through the CARES
Yes.
Act. Okay.
Yes.
And that all fits with how they usually do things, isn't it? I mean, it's rare that we truly understand why we're getting what we're getting or getting cut what we're cut. There just doesn't seem to be a clear and consistent, right. That's not even a clear reason why they're doing what they're doing.
Basically what I can tell you is all the cuts from the state and the federal CARES money, everything is being based on economic disadvantaged students. How many do you have? So if you have a high economic disadvantaged population, your cuts are less. If you have a high economic disadvantage, you're going to get more federal money. So that's what I can tell you is the consistent about it. It all depends on that free and reduced lunch number.
That makes sense.
That's only because they don't have anything else to go by, right?
pretty much. I think the federal CARES money, the federal government came out and said, hey, you have to divide this up just like you do your Title I money, which is Title I money is designed for economic disadvantaged students. So that's understandable. The state, they could have done it any way they wanted. They just kind of followed that same pattern though, as far as the cuts are concerned.
Yeah, because our hit on that 300 million was 1/240th of the amount. Like there's only 240 schools in the state. Right. And I get that we're bigger, but it just doesn't wash. It doesn't seem like the coronavirus should be a windfall for anybody.
Right.
That's
if you look at some districts, you'll notice like some of the districts that kind of stood out to me as you look at the city of Hamilton. The city of Hamilton gets $76 million from the state. They're being cut about $1 million. So yeah, there's definitely some discrepancies there.
Guess we need to write our congressman.
Well, I think after these 2 months, the definition of that economic distress has changed too. I think that
absolutely
that bucket has increased significantly.
Yes. Anything else here? So the next item is the Drug-Free Coalition Club Stipends. These are given out every year. This is done through the federal drug-free grant that we receive. So these are stipends that we pay out on an annual basis. This is just the time of year that we do them. And then the final item is in John's section earlier was the hiring of the new payroll manager. So Brad Walker will be coming in as the new payroll manager with Heidi retiring at the end of the fiscal year, or I'm sorry, at the end of the calendar year, and Debbie moving over at the July 1st. We decided to bring in the manager position now. Brad comes to us from Winton Woods, where he's got 6 years of experience with school software. So I feel that the transition with him coming over here should be fairly smooth. But yeah, very, very excited to have Brad coming on board. And that's all I had.
Brian, are we still doing shared payroll with anyone, or has that kind of disappeared?
No, we are actually, Heidi's still doing the shared payroll with Winton Woods. So actually, Brad's the one that Heidi works with over there. So Winton Woods system is set up exactly like ours with our time card system. That's why I believe that the transition will work out fairly well. Talking with Randy over at Winton Woods, obviously he would like Heidi to continue to help the new person coming on. But once Heidi retires, we wouldn't continue that relationship anymore.
Oh, so we won't do shared payroll when Heidi is completely gone.
Right. Conversations I had with Randy is he's probably going to hire her. He's going to bring her on as a rehired retiree to still work with them. So we would be out of that mix.
Okay. And they're the only district that we are working with in that capacity.
Yes. So she basically 2 days a month, that is what she works with them.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thanks.
Sure.
At one time, wasn't that number a lot larger? I feel like there were 5 or 6 districts that we were.
Not that I'm aware of. As far as I know, it's always been just Winton Woods.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought there were at least 2 others, but
Yeah,
maybe it was something we were looking at and we never did it or something.
Got it.
As far as I know, it was only Winton Woods.
Okay.
The multiple districts has always been nutrition services.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions for Treasurer Rabe? Any comments on the report? Hearing none, we'll ask for a motion for adjournment.
Chris, before you do that,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I have an answer for Dave's question on the nicotine test.
Yes.
It is 4 days. One of the byproducts stays in your saliva for 4 days. The byproduct is continine, and it's can be there for 4 days.
Well, you were certainly Googling.
No. I call Patty Price. I'm way smarter than that.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Chris, there's one more thing that Rob Dunn and I were working on yesterday that I want to share with everyone. Through these past 8 weeks, Rob has had parents reach out to him about, we'd like to purchase a Chromebook for our elementary, like our grades 4 through 6 students. And Rob can share with you what we're looking at. We're not looking at going one-to-one, but we may have an option for families more to just help them with their purchase of a device if they want one. So Rob, I'll just turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you. We're going to get some exact numbers first before we decide what options we can try to make available to parents. But we're going to confirm exactly the exact number of devices we have on carts. We were thinking about safety regarding COVID and the fall and the return, even though we don't know how that will look yet. When that happens and how that happens, the sharing of devices can create a challenge for us because students can't really share devices from carts. The process, there are just some risks in that related to COVID. So we're trying to find some solutions to that. And the first thing we're going to do is confirm exactly how many devices we have. We think we have enough for about 75% of our students in elementary. That sounds easier than it is because they're in carts, they're wired in, and it's not like that lines up exactly by number what you would need. So we're going to first look at what our numbers are, where they are, enrollment numbers in those grade levels, and then kind of see how far the distance is from what they would need to have a device assigned to a kid, not a device that goes home with the student. It would be that when a child is at school, they would only use the same device from a certain cart, and they would be the only ones touching that at all times. So once we figure all that out, we'll look and see what options we might be able to create, whether it is we have a refresh plan to get additional carts next year, probably not enough to offset that difference. But we can also look at creating the buy option for parents. It's not something we've done in the past in the lower grades because from a management standpoint, we have a very precise way that we can manage it, and we know what grade a kid is in, how long that warranty lasts. So it certainly is easier to manage the way we're doing it, but it could be managed by making that something available to people, maybe fourth through 6th grade. We're just trying to crunch some numbers to see what that cost would be to parents. It would only be something a person could choose to do. It would not be something that we would expect people to do. So those are some of the things we're looking at as we're trying to think about how to make it safe for students in the fall to have devices in their hands.
If you did that, would that imply that they would be able to take them home, or would they still remain at the school?
It's a good question. If they purchase it, that's theirs to bring back and forth. So those definitely would be theirs to bring back and forth like we do in 7th grade and above. We manage those devices. We help with the warranty pieces. We have them repaired. But the other students who would be getting them from carts, those would not be going home. Those would only be used likely. I mean, I'm saying that like I know that. We haven't really planned all this out because we don't know what the fall is going to look like. But we don't believe the desire would be for them to take those home because that gets really complicated. And if they bring it back and then we'd have to find a different device, it would just be for while they are at school.
Yeah, it just kind of concerns me, people taking them home and then bringing them back into the school, and you don't know what kind of germs that you're going to bring back.
Yeah, I mean, the one advantage would be they would be the only one touching it, so that's good. Second, you're right, we might have to put a little bit of a process in place, like other things, taking temperatures and this and that might be required for that device each day. So yes, we will have to think about that as we develop this plan.
Not to be paranoid, but.
Well, I'm glad you guys brought this up because there's a question I wanted to ask and I forgot. So as we look toward next year and we have all of these questions about how things are going to look, from computers to well, even to buses, how many students can we put on a bus safely? We really have no idea what kind of investment we're going to need to be able to meet safety requirements at this point, correct?
That is correct. We have long, 10, 12 pages long of questions that we've developed, that we've gotten from other documents about, how do you reopen safely, and all of the considerations from transportation to child drop off and pickup to what social distancing looks like, what the state's going to require.
And we have different classroom sizes in different schools. Right. So some we may not be able to do a 50% class. Right. And none of that. So we don't have any number built into the forecast for investment required for this, correct? Because there's no way to estimate it.
The positive is that the CARES Act will be able to be used for a lot of those kinds of expenses.
The money we've already received, or are we expecting more for this kind of thing?
The 400, Brian, go ahead.
The federal money, the $470,000, one of the things that they did come out and say you could use it for is any type of cleaning supplies, any type of cleaning equipment. So yes, that money could be used to purchase what's needed in those areas.
Okay, and that's not in our forecast.
No, that would be separate.
And just to jump in real quick from the technology side of it, we would, as we look at these options and we really make a decision as the best way to handle this, it really might come down to our decisions about what we have to do and need to do and can't do. So realistically, I don't think we would make a decision that would increase our costs in this arena. I think we would have to make some decisions about some other things that we might have to put off for the moment so that we can make this happen. So my intention would not be to increase costs anywhere. It would be to figure out what our priorities are and reallocate some things that I have.
From a custodial perspective, we've been looking at a number of different things. One of the challenges we've got is, in order to even come close to having something here by August, we're going to need to make some decisions if we want to buy some equipment here soon because of the backlog of, quite honestly, a lot of it's hospital grade type cleaning equipment. So we are looking at some things. We haven't made any decisions. I've met with a couple of vendors this week, so we are looking at some things. Step up our disinfecting game, even beyond what we've done in the past, which is pretty significant, what we've been doing for many years. But there's some equipment and some different chemicals out there that we might be switching over to.
Rob, back to families purchasing devices. Is there ever a way to have the school get better prices? So like when this started, I was able to purchase, 2 laptops for my kids to work from home, and we just went on Amazon and looked at good reviews. There wasn't, it wasn't all that fancy. But if there is an at-home learning component in the fall, might there be a way that parents just buy devices to keep at home, separate from what you were saying about, adding to the cart or something like that, where we'd have enough of a group, it'd almost be a group pricing or something that families could access?
Yes, our pricing, it's really kind of tricky. Our devices that we get for students, it's an unbelievable deal. It's way beyond what they even realize, because it seems like it's $300, which it is, but that $300, the main cost of that isn't the device. The device itself is, I don't know, it's probably not even $200. But when you factor in the insanity of that warranty, which is literally every bit of coverage for 3 years in every direction, you bring it in, it gets repaired, and that's really the more expensive piece that we have in place, because we know that's necessary more so than even the device. So if we are going to offer the same kind of opportunity, I think we would do it under the same umbrella. So it might appear like it's a $300 device, but that's going to be because it comes with a pretty durable, heavy duty case as well as a front to back warranty. And then when a parent has an issue, the school sends it out, because that's really the piece that can get in the way of everything for parents. It can take a lot to get it to Apple or to Best Buy, especially speaking about what's happening now with all that. So yeah, we go through different vendors to find the best pricing with the whole package. The other piece that would be included, that would be complicated in this, is if we were to expand that into elementary schools, what we do at the junior high and high school, that's just not something that happens naturally. There's an additional component and cost to them going to the elementary schools now, picking those up and all that. But those would be all things that we would have to talk about and plan and decide what the best option is. And it's not that we want to offer this or that we don't want to offer it, but if this is something that would be very helpful to parents or community members, it's maybe worth considering.
Yeah, I just think the wear and tear of a device I keep in my front office for my kids to use is not the same as that full protection plan I absolutely needed for my junior high student who's schlepping it back and forth to school. But if one of my younger students is using it in a front office and it really doesn't move, you know what I mean? Like, come off the desk.
So are you thinking maybe we could see about providing those for purchase only without all those pieces?
Yeah, just because if the supplemental school year looks like some time spent doing school from home again in the fall, to have a device for my student at school and a device for them at home, because I don't exactly trust my first grader to carry a laptop back and forth. So
we weren't necessarily talking about this being for K2
that young,
because that's just one pretty significant management piece for a primary grades teacher.
Yeah.
It was really for the intermediate grades.
Middle. But even so, I mean, if that would help my student better as a second grader, first grader now, second grader, I would consider, if it's a parent only without a protection plan. I mean, if not, I'll just go on Amazon and purchase one. And that's not a totally fair option too. But
the device that we're offering to the current sixth graders going into seventh or ninth going into 10th is actually, the device itself is $189. So those additional other costs are the warranty, the Google management, the gumdrop case, that gets it to the 300.
Yeah, just something to consider. And there's enough complexity for you out there, but for an investment for a family, it's something that I would consider.
Yeah, I mean, and for us, it's the management that's the work for us.
Right.
If it was just a purchase to take home and that we don't have to do anything with it, that then is off our plate. So it's all stuff to think about. Thank you. Any other questions?
No, I also wanted to just thank Superintendent House, Treasurer Rabe, and your team. I know you continue to work on these contingency plans in a very unknown environment. I think that ultimately it's some form of one of three decisions that will occur for our next school year. One is obviously full in-building curriculum, some sort of blended learning, or full virtual, or some iteration of those three. And we'll have to wait for state guidance in regards to that. A lot of the state decisions have been mandates. It'll be a question of whether they mandate or give some local decision to some of these various plans moving forward. And again, thank you for, I know your team is working hard to put together some of these contingencies as we move forward.
Thank you. I'll just share one piece of really great news. Next week, our high school principals and some teachers are going to deliver the graduation gig bags to every single senior. So it'll be an exciting time, but their cap, gown, tassel, diploma cover, and then some other surprises that we're not sharing yet they're part of that. It's pretty awesome. And then one of those days, Principal Kaufman and I are also going to deliver the military Eagle Wing pins to the 14 seniors who have committed to or have enlisted in the military, so that they have those to wear during the virtual ceremony. So.
Okay, any other questions, comments? Okay, looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Chestnut,
Yes.
Mr. Miranda,
Yes.
Mr. Yaki,
Yes.
Mrs. Brady,
Yes.
Mr. Ham.
Yes, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Have a great weekend.
You too.
Thanks.